Good evening. Taking the US-India ties to a new dimension in a post-pandemic world or a post-Wuhan virus world, and a world where China has emerged as the expansionist aggressor. Interestingly, it was not China that was named as a nation, but the Chinese Communist Party that was very strongly named, saying that it is Xi Jinping and the Communist Party which has to be held to account for the current situation that we face, and saying that we need to take that on unitedly. That's been the focus of a landmark India Ideas Summit so far. The geopolitical basket, the need for US to work in a multipolar world is what Subramaniam Jaishankar, the foreign minister, said, saying that let's look beyond the old alliances. Some of the issues raised by Subramaniam Jaishankar, saying that we need to find more points of convergence. We need to try and iron out our issues, and also look at a multipolar world, and also a world where there will be multilateralism of a different dimension. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, on the other hand, stressed on the Chinese Communist Party as a mutual threat, as he commended India's standing up to China and its decision to ban Chinese app. Mike Pompeo also came out very strongly in support of India against China's bullying and its aggression, stressing on the importance of the US-India relationship. Let's listen in to what Mike Pompeo had to say.
The United States desires a new age of ambition in our relationship. We don't just interact on a bilateral basis, we see each other for what we are: great democracies, global powers, and really good friends. India is one of a few trusted, like-minded countries whose leaders I call on a regular basis for counsel and collaboration on issues that span continents. It's important that democracies like ours work together, especially as we see more clearly than ever the true scope of the challenge posed by the Chinese Communist Party. Our infrastructure projects, our supply chains, our sovereignty, and our people's health and safety are all at risk if we get it wrong. The recent clashes initiated by the PLA are just the latest examples of the CCP's unacceptable behavior. I especially commend India's recent decision to ban 59 Chinese mobile apps, including TikTok, that present serious security risks for the Indian people.
The US really has to learn to work in a sense with a more multipolar world, with more plurilateral arrangements, go beyond alliances with which really it has grown up over the last two generations. We have the ability today, by working together, to shape the world. We are working on maritime security, counter-terrorism, connectivity, how to respond in the case of corona to pandemics. Some of the key answers, the principles on which we should be building this relationship, is really to recognize and build on trusted talent and on creating more resilient supply chains on which both of us participate.
We are the two leaders. Now let's try and look at what is it that we need to do as a nation. Is allying or getting closer to the United States going to help India, or does India need to have more friends and less of allies? Can we make those delineations very, very clear, saying that we will work with nations as long as it furthers our interest? And the challenge is, how fast can we become self-reliant? Because the stronger we are, and if perhaps we are a global manufacturing hub, will that be actually directly proportional to the strength that we wield, or the heft that we wield internationally? New beginnings are being underlined, but what is going to be the focus? We're building up to the Prime Minister speaking in a short while from now at around 9 p.m. tonight at the India Ideas Summit. But first, let's just get a quick thought from what is a very, very august panel, and they're all getting on one by one. I'm going to first start with Ambassador G. Parthasarathy with us, and we also have Nitin Gokhale, National Security Analyst and founder of BharatShakti.in. We also have Ainat Jangin, someone I love to spar with and also have an exchange of ideas. I have great amount of respect for him, joining us from Beijing. He's an American citizen, but who's based in Beijing, so perhaps in a position to analyze and also explain to us what the geopolitical climate is and what are the changes that we should look forward to. But Ambassador Parthasarathy, somewhere I get the feeling that India has to now champion another axis beyond US and China. Just like Mr. Jaishankar said at the Mind Summit, that the world going forward will be multipolar in nature with a few bipolar characteristics. And for that, we have to emerge as one of the thought leaders.
let me put it back to what I said earlier. Chinese believe in comprehensive national power. So if you are going to take them on, and I think we should, after the disgraceful way they behaved in the recent impeachment in the past, you would have to take them on economically, politically, militarily. By militarily, I don't mean we go to war, but have a deterrent capability. Now, what we are doing as of today, as I see it, that in terms of the diplomatic side of it, look, China is daggers drawn with all its neighbors because of its boundary claims. I think we should join the United States, Australia, and Japan in forming a grouping to influence all these people to get China to respect international borders and recognized borders. Because when they are forced to do that there, they have to be forced to do it with us. Right now, there's no pressure on them except for Vietnam and Indonesia. And for a start, we should start with Indonesia and Vietnam and turn the diplomatic squeeze them on borders. Militarily, I won't go into it, but let me just say that on the day they killed 20 of our soldiers, they took pretty heavy casualties. So I'll leave it at that. And they will think twice, I think. But we'll always have to be prepared for military adventurism.
Well, there are many people, you know, I've been reading a lot of people who've put in a lot of opinion pieces, and see, so the fight is not in terms of military strength or military strength anymore. It's more about economic dominance. It's more about...
I'm coming to that.
Sir, I'll circle back. We've got Manjeet Kriplani also, so we're all there together for the next 1 hour. So we'll get everyone in. Manjeet Kriplani ji, thank you very much, Executive Director, Gateway House. One of the concerns is, and Arvind Subramanian wrote a very interesting piece. We'll talk about that also, where he said that China made the wrong choice, or Xi Jinping made the wrong choice. Today, Mike Pompeo also did not single out China as a nation. He singled out the Chinese Communist Party, the leadership. The way Chinese leadership is thinking and the way, the direction in which they are going, that's the problem. But the only way to take on the Chinese is to also strengthen. Nations have to come together to build that level of economic strength. Senator Wagner also spoke about the same thing. He says that Chinese state, the state-backed corporate entrepreneurship, other nations can't duplicate that. We'll have to counter that together. That's where the challenge is.
You're absolutely right. And I don't think anybody has a fight with the Chinese people. I think the fight is with the Chinese Communist Party, which has a plan for world domination. And we have to understand that we don't want to be part of their plan. And it turns out that neither does the rest of the world. People were keeping quiet all this time because the great power, the US, was okay with China doing what it was doing. And along comes Mr. Trump and he says, I'm not going to allow this. So Trump has been preparing for an Atmanirbhar America, just like we are preparing for an Atmanirbhar India, economically. He wants the jobs to come back home, and the only way to do it is now to stop the trade, because the US is one of China's biggest markets. Right. So he began the process, and we would have actually not done very much had it not been for that fateful night of June 15th, when we realized we had before on April 30th already stopped Chinese investments from coming into our startups. And I think that was the last straw. That made India take sides. And we know we do not want Chinese investments because we don't know how those investments are going to be misused. And so we are now embracing the United States, which we should have done a long time ago, because they have the capacity to help us. The problem now is, I've been listening to the US IBC talks and meetings. There's a lot of talk about trade. You know, that's an old hang-up. Trade is good, yes, but we are not in that position to go to the old trade. We have to find new ways of trading. We need new trade instruments. And we have to look at the world as a new economy globally from what it was after the Second World War, when all these old trade regimes were set up.
Correct.
We have to now look at our own economy, what it's like. There's an informal sector, but actually we are now in a very good position to start out anew, because it isn't just digitization that India has embraced very well. it is also digital manufacturing, which is now going to be the new way that things are going to be manufactured, right? It's not going to be automation or robotization, which is what Japan needs because it doesn't have enough people. It is working very smartly with machines on the assembly line so that people can be well utilized without these repetitive jobs. And so we are in a very sweet spot, and I'm really glad that we have this partnership with the US because they are in the same position as we are. For 30 years, they outsourced everything to China. They sort of hollowed out their manufacturing. We didn't have the manufacturing for 30 years, so now we're on equal footing.
Correct.
And I think it's a good place to start.
No, but the fact is that we have to amp up and ramp up our manufacturing capabilities, and we've become a manufacturing nation at a breakneck speed. We have to do it faster than even what the Chinese did. That's what we have to be able to do. Narendra Taneja joins us this evening. Einar Tangen, the challenge is that America also cannot do beyond a certain level because China has about $3 trillion of reserves, and if they dump the dollars, the Americans will be sweating. There are also these dynamics that come into play. In this reset of geopolitical equations, do you think making Chinese Communist Party the villain is a smart thing to try and also push for a rebellion within China, where they push for a democracy there and enough of a communist and a state-driven authoritarian autocratic rule?
Well, quite frankly, I mean, it's not going to work right now, especially. The Chinese people are fairly satisfied in comparison with the way that their government has handled the COVID-19 situation and also the economy. So, the vast majority, over 95%, believe that the government has done the best job that they could. So at this point, this idea that somehow China is on the brink of a revolution or Xi Jinping is under pressure is nonsense. That's something that's peddled by tabloid journalism internationally, but it just isn't true. And you can see the figures. You look at what China has achieved in terms of preventing infections, the number of deaths kept to a minimum versus other nations. So at this
point, the fact is, I know that China has not officially shared the numbers with the world. They've now done it for the last 3 months. After 85,000, they stopped even reporting the numbers globally. And you also know that Beijing was vacated. There are reports which say that Xi Jinping and even some of the top leaders, the Chinese Prime Minister, were also out of Beijing because of the surge in cases in Beijing.
That it's quite truthful. I am always skeptical of any kind of numbers that are out there, and I always like to test. I make sure that I talk to not only journalists, but other individuals, people who were in Wuhan, who run corporations there, Chinese people, doctors, everybody. It's quite clear that the Chinese are telling the truth. And you can see that by the way that their economy has been able to open up. In terms of what my colleagues say, I agree. India needs to stand up for itself. It needs self-determination. The question is, how does it do that? What has prevented India from doing all the things that they've said these many years? Nothing has really changed. China was never India's crutch, all right? Quite different economies. India needs to stand up and decide what it can do. But the question is, will the US be able to help them? Mired in debt, about to pass another $1 trillion or more subsidy for the economic situation with no end in sight, out of control COVID-19, a president who will probably be only around for the next 3 months in terms of the election, another 6 months in terms of his service. These are the types of things that India should be thinking about. Will a bankrupt U.S. be able to do anything? In terms of China's reserves, yes, they have $3 trillion, but only $1 trillion is in U.S. greenbacks. The rest is spread out otherwise. Would China want to disrupt the global economic system? Absolutely not. It's not to their advantage. China wants a stable global world just so it can export things, so it can purchase raw materials. So this idea that somehow China would benefit from the world going down is quite the opposite of truth. They are turning more inward. But in the end, China desires cooperation. Otherwise, they would not be doing Belt and Road. They would not be trying to get people to join.
But is that because of cooperation?
These trade groups.
Somewhere, I would buy in a lot of your arguments saying that what China wanted to do, but I have to lend in to this belief that Xi Jinping made the wrong call by turning expansionist at a time when the world wanted it to be cooperative. And perhaps that's the wrong move. Nitin Gokhale, how would you want to respond to Anna Tangen? And I'll come back to Ambassador Patsarthi and also Ms. Kriplani. And Narendra Taneja, coming to you, sir, after Nitin Gokhale. Yeah.
Well, I think China is currently in a phase where they do not know whether they should be more than aggressive that they are right now. From Japan to Bhutan, they are raking up issues that have been dormant for some time, border issues. They've been aggressive against Japan, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, India. Even tiny Bhutan is not spared. They have raked up long dormant border issue with Bhutan, or let's say something that had not come up for the last 30 years, just precisely because there is trouble back home, and then some diversion is needed. There is some kind of unrest, I would say, in the minds of the Chinese people there. And therefore this, and of course China is expansionist. I think Xi Jinping is the new Mao, according to what is being reported from China, that his thoughts are now being taught, his thoughts are being discussed in think tanks. He's just become the supreme leader for everybody, and has also become a target, therefore, a sole target of criticism as well as internal pressures in the Chinese system. And therefore, he is doing what he's doing across Asia, and of course trying to take on America, and also has trying to spread what falsehoods there could be, or the kind of perception management that they're trying to do everywhere. So I would respond by saying that China today is friendless. It has maybe two supporters. I would call them client states, North Korea and Pakistan. They are friendless in Asia. They are friendless in Europe. Although they might use their deep pockets to influence and win over some countries and some leaders in Africa and maybe even Europe.
Right.
But they're clearly in a position where they are taking on, I'm trying to take on the Americans, and the Americans, remember, are still far more powerful economically and militarily than China is. And therefore, I think this is a miscalculation, that it's an overreach on China's part. They're probably 10 years early in doing what they're doing right now across the world.
Well, I'm going to bring in Narendra Taneja here, and I'm just also highlight some of the points where the expectations are from India. Can I just quickly walk across and bring it across to, yeah, there you go. Now, these are the expectations which India has, Narendra Taneja ji, and also they also automatically become challenges. One is to lead the way to a multipolar world. This is what Mr. Jaishankar has spoken about, and if Mr. Jaishankar has said this, and this is how it is, that increasingly we will be protectionist in nature, nations will be protectionist in nature, but you will not have a bipolarity like you had in the past, 40 years ago. We are not coming back to that bipolar world. We will have a multipolar world, but India will have to lead. How will we do it? How can we maintain an equidistance both from US and China? Because just like if China is expansionist, wherever the US have gone in, they have left behind a trail of devastation. Nation after nation. That's what's happened. So they've moved on, sucked that nation dry, moved on or pulled out. But after that, everybody is left to pick up the pieces. Look at what's happened with Syria, where Trump himself said that America wanted to go in for 30 minutes in and out, and that 30 minutes has lasted more than a decade. Championing loose grouping of G20 nations aside of US and China. Can we get these nations together? Can we get smaller nations which are still robust as a collective? Can we get them to work together? Is it possible? Drawing a distinction between a friend and an ally. It's very different, in foreign policy. Will that be possible? And more importantly, achieving self-reliance along with strategic collaboration, and all of this hinges upon us becoming a global manufacturing hub, because unless we are strong economically, we will have no say. Narendra Taneja.
Anand. Anand, let's not oversimplify it. It's far more complex. The United States is a very close friend, strategic partner. Japan is a close friend, strategic partner. Vietnam is a very close friend. Australia is a close friend. And at the same time, we know we got to accept the reality that the gravity center of the global economy has shifted now to our part of the world, is now here in Indo-Pacific region. The United States included, China, Japan, India, Vietnam, ASEAN, Australia. So the global economic gravity center has shifted already. Now with this, we have seen now what's happening, that, there is a country, they think that, look, they are well equipped, the economy is very large, so they are basically now trying to kind of emerge as a super hegemon of Asia. It's not acceptable to India. It's not acceptable to Japan. It's not acceptable even to small Singapore. Even they don't accept it. Of course, not to Indonesia, Australia, the United States, and all others, including the European Union. It's just not acceptable. But they are trying to impose it. What's going to be India's stand? We want to make sure and ensure that Asia of tomorrow is multipolar. It's not unipolar. We don't want to dominate Asia, but at the same time, we have to make sure and ensure that Asia is not allowed to be dominated by any other country.
Correct.
So that's why, that's why Indo-Pacific cooperation, there's a lot going on there. You just saw the, exercises between our Navy and the US Navy. They were not just there for picnic. They were sending a message to those who his message should go to. And at the same time, the Quad has been activated and ideas to further strengthen it. So a lot of work going on. But, in politics, we understand. Politics is not, charity. I mean, they are going to try their best, and we are going to try our best and make sure. But one thing is very clear. But one thing you talked about, you see, in terms of economic growth and economic this thing. Look at any analysis by any credible agency. By 2040, 2050, in the life of a nation is just tomorrow. India is going to be roughly $35 trillion economy.
Correct.
Not on PP, on nominal basis. China is also going to be maybe $40 trillion economy. The United States may be in the same side. So we have to look at, for instance, potential United States, western part of the world, and even China.
Mr.
They
Taneja,
need India
here
to
is my
sustain
concern.
their growth.
Here is my
they sustain
concern.
their own growth.
Sir,
The point here is just last line. The point here is that, yes, manufacturing is important, but Anand, the world has moved on. We are not focusing more on robotics. We are focusing on artificial intelligence. We are already focusing on the economy. That's going to be the real economy tomorrow.
When I say manufacturing hub,
the kind of investment
when
that
I
is
say
coming to India
manufacturing
by
hub,
American
I'm not
companies.
looking at it in the traditional manufacturing sense. I'm saying at any levels, even if it is digital manufacturing, you're looking at it in whichever dynamic. We have to become a hub where we are going to become a supplier or a source provider to the nation, because that's the only way
Absolutely.
Correct. And for that, and for us to become, even in 2040, a 45 trillion economy, or an 18 trillion economy, or a 40 trillion, 20 trillion economy, by 2040, however you want to say it, we have to start work now. Are we doing it? We have to make it. We have to make ourselves. We have to make ourselves a nation which is ready to take that and shoulder that. I'll tell you what's one aspect, and let me just bring in Ambassador Parthasarathi, and then I'll come back to you. Let's get everybody's thoughts here, and I'm talking about economic stability because that's the only way we are going to get any heft, Ambassador Parthasarathi. I've just got this from my research team. Between 2000 and 2017, the world's debt obligations to China rose from $500 billion to a staggering $5 trillion, about 6% of the world's economic output, according to the Kiel Institute for World Economy. Researchers also found that China and its subsidiaries have lent $1.5 trillion directly to 150 nations, making China the biggest creditor, overtaking the IMF, World Bank. And it has also made an unreported loans worth $200 billion. And we are given to, and I'm not even counting the commercial investment or a business investments that Chinese state-backed companies have also invested in countries. Look at the economic heft that China has across the world right now. And nations will have to come together. No individual country can counter this. Ambassador Parthasarathi.
Well, let me look at the Chinese so-called road in BRIC initiative. They have driven every country they've gone into debt.
Yes.
I have spoken to the Africans, the Kenyans, the Tanzanians are fed up with them, and they believe the Chinese are out to take their territory, like they took the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka. So the conduct of Chinese foreign policy is expansionism. Of course, I heard someone speaking like a member of the Chinese Politburo earlier, but that's a different matter.
No, he holds an American passport.
He
He's an American citizen. That's what Anna Tangen's response would be.
That's why I said,
although even if he's joining us from Beijing.
I said speaking like a member of the Communist Party Politburo. The fact of the matter is that we now have to be very clear of what we want. And what I see is that as countries are moving out, I already see them moving into countries like Vietnam and Malaysia. We should now, we got this meeting going, get ourselves properly organized with American business. First and foremost, I think the electronics industry and also pharmaceuticals, where we are leaders. I think these are what we should concentrate on for world influence. More importantly, we should become a country with greater ease of doing business. That is not yet the case. I think, let us be real, with successive governments. So we do have a task before us. But one thing I want to say of recent developments, I think the Chinese know that crude use of military power may make them pay very heavy casualties. So, which has happened.
Right.
The other point is that the fact of the matter is, we want a good relationship with them, but they cannot treat us the way they go around seizing the maritime boundaries of every neighbor. 10 ASEAN countries have joined together and passed a resolution demanding that they respect international law. They are in gross violation of international law.
Correct. But the
So I
point
think the fact is, we've got a good diplomatic overhead of us. We've got, for the first time, backing of an administration and the US Congress.
Right.
We have set up the Quad. The Europeans, at least Germany and Britain, are looking very positive.
Right.
And the most important thing is, we should join the Quad and expose the Chinese exploitation and driving of our neighbors in Africa and Asia.
But at what cost? But at what cost? And we have to be very careful because, Ms. Kripalani, wherever America has set foot, they have left behind a trail of devastation. They have left behind broken nations. If you look at the Middle East, if we look at the AFPAC region, wherever they go, on the one hand, if China enslaves nations economically, here US, once they get into this region, they will then start spreading their interests. We cannot have that too. We have to be able to learn to stand up and say, you stay here, we'll work.
I don't think we are living in that kind of world anymore. And I also disagree. I don't think the US tells people what to do. I think that they tell people what to do when people ask them what to do. We are not asking anybody what to do. We have an equal alliance with the United States. And the way to move it forward is really two things that really make China very attractive. Was A, they had a one-window clearance for everything. So we need to have also a very, very light touch. So Invest India is very good at that just now. They need to ramp it up. And secondly, we need a very light regulatory touch. Our regulations are really complicated. And I don't think I think our bureaucrats are the ones that drive the Americans and others also crazy. Right. So we need to just lighten up on that a little bit. And we're not any less with the Americans. Our businessmen have become global. You know, in a month after June 15th, we've got nearly $20 billion pledged to one company by the United States. Right. You know, in the US, the flag follows its business. And we're here, we're partners, and we're happy for it. We'd rather have them. The Europeans have been very, very slow. And now they've complicated themselves. They're also very complex with Europe, with China. So we have a very good partner. I agree with Ambassador Parthasarathy. We should be part of the Quad, an equal partner with the Quad. Right. And the Quad now needs to have the undergirding of a real multilateral, a really new multilateral, which is not just a defense thought, but needs to have a technological and an economic undergirding. And I think we can contribute a lot because look at it. Right. You've got the United States, you've got Japan and Australia, three very powerful developed countries, but smaller countries. We are the underdeveloped country, but we are a very good test market. So we can develop all kinds of technologies with them, because we also have technological, software strengths.
Right.
And I think it's a very good partnership. So we are not anybody's inferior or superior. We are now on an equal level.
So you believe that the leverage is going to be 50-50 or say 55-45,
yes.
but it's not going to be lopsided in terms of a 70-30 leverage.
No, not at all.
And we are also in a far more solid footing than some other nations, and some other reasons. And reasons for US engagement with India is different compared to its engagement or its entry into, say, Middle East or getting into the AFPAC region, etc.
Yes.
I've got Dr. Sampath Shivangi joining us this one, Republican Dr. Sampath Shivangi, I should say that, and I should also congratulate you for being nominated delegate for the 5th straight time. You're elected Republican delegate for the 5th time in a row, Dr. Shivangi, and you will be there in August at the Florida Convention. But let me ask you this. The latest numbers are not stacked up in favor of President Donald Trump. And this entire talk about India-US bonhomie, is it just short-lived for 3-6 months, and will things change if it is the Democrats or Joe Biden who comes in?
I agree. Thank you for inviting me. The basic difference, even the last time when Trump ran, nobody gave him even 5% chance. So everyone thought Hillary Clinton is going to be the victor. And even she planned to have a big celebration of her victory. Then what happened? See, President Trump has a basic followers all over the country. They may not express outwardly, but when the voting comes, when the polling comes, they will be all with him. The other good news I am going to tell, since Modi's visit to US, Howdy Modi, and President Trump's visit to Ahmedabad, there is a substantial increase of Indian Americans, which we are about 4 million voters. And on this Sunday, last Sunday, we had American Hindus for America. There was some group there. They invited me to come and speak. And we had 100,000 people joined in that virtual meeting and pledged to support President Trump. It never happened. So he's guaranteed at least 50 to 60% of Indian votes compared to 20% last election.
But Dr. Shivangi, the Indian American vote base is what, 4% or 5%? How much of an influence is that going to be? Our concern is what, in terms of the shift in America's approach with India, the Indo US ties. Will that get, and of course the geopolitical positionings currently, will they all get realigned and will they get all brushed under the carpet if there is a change in November?
Yeah. No, yeah, there is actually.
Because you've also worked with the Democrats, you've also worked with President Obama towards strengthening Indo-US ties. So that's why I'm asking you.
His 50% partner is Sanders, who is a left-leaning, anti-India, proposition he has. So a lot of Sanders group has joined Biden group in the upcoming election. That will definitely make, not very favorable towards India, but things might change because Biden was a friend of India and he was one of the architects to have India-US civil nuclear treaty during the George W. Bush administration. So he is not openly telling against India, but he has some followers coming out of Sanders group who are creating this problem, saying that we need to recheck on 370, CAA. I wrote a very strong op-ed in Times of India saying that Biden, a candidate, has no right to intervene or interfere in the sovereign nation's internal affairs. So that has caught fire in the US, at least amongst Indian Americans. I think Trump may get 70-80% of Indian American votes, which is several million votes. Makes a lot of difference because he won not by big majority, as you know, last time.
Yes.
So he is on the borderline. If Indian Americans and other ethnic groups join this, it is possible him to come back, and you can see
Because many
days
believe
for
that
India
that,
under
the,
Trump.
that the entire Black Lives Matter movement, the incident that happened, all of that has and of course President Trump's handling of the Wuhan virus and the COVID-19 situation will all backfire, and that's also reflecting in the numbers, in the ratings, which are clearly currently favoring Joe Biden. We've got to take a short pause here. It's a continuous broadcast. Our panelists will stay on with us, and we'll now take this forward in terms of what should India now do? How should India prepare? Should India prepare for the next 20, 30, 40 years, or wait as to what happens in the next 6 months in the United States? And of course, building up to the Prime Minister's address at 9 p.m., what can we expect from the Prime Minister today at the India Ideas Summit? With our panelists, after a very short break, stay with us.